Hello, Tareck Adeeb community. Hello, accessible astrology community. Hello, everyone out there who might have an interest in philosophy, art, esotericism, the nature of why we are here. For all you people, for all you artists, people who want to be a part of a subculture, the people who are on a path to peace, everybody who is in this together, i.e. there is more of us, the majority, or the 5%ers, the people who really understand the nature of consciousness, who want to make the difference. I'm reaching out to you people right now. Now, it's fascinating to think how this year has gone. It is challenging. Let's turn this fan off. It is challenging. And I'm going to get really into the astrology and where we are right now and what's happening. Yeah.
Do you want me to bring you both?
Please.
Are you on the way right now?
I am.
Oh, okay.
So it's challenging because we're constantly in a state of the world is changing, and again, I think most people who are listening to this are conscious or understanding that something's not quite right or want to make the difference. And, that's why this year I've tried to be as consistent as I can to show up and to talk to you all. And again, patience is a virtue. Integrity requires a lot of trust. Experience is all to do with wisdom. So all of the things that we are trying to get better, i.e. be better, be sovereign, be optimistic, which is a very Sagittarius trait. So obviously there's always personal biases. This is something we really need to understand. We all have a propensity for something. For example, my father was a real stickler for the details. That's what made him very strong. And he was a Scorpio. So his level of focus was beyond most people's, because that fixed energy, that focus, that attention to the details. Scorpio can be very, very obsessive. So, what was great about my dad was that when it came to, let's say, the end, Scorpio again, death, that kind of experience, he would always have the details to cover the worst case scenario. That's what makes Scorpio very strong. They'll always have the medicine, for example, to pull out if required, to go into the death or to face death, and it makes them very powerful, very enigmatic. And we're moving out of this South Node in Scorpio, Well, we're out of it now, so we need to talk about, obviously, we need to talk about where we are now with the South Node in Libra, and it's a lot, especially with this Venus retrograde, which is what I'm going to talk most about today. But in relationship, which is Venus retrograde has a lot to do with, my mum, she was an Aries, she was a fire sign. So she always had this sort of naive, youthful exuberance. So, for example, there's other aspects of the chart, Pisces and stuff, which I'm not going to go into. There's the whole chart. That's why you have to get a whole chart reading or understand yourself to navigate these times. Because you might have a bias, you might have a propensity for something. So with my dad, even though he was a stickler for the details, he knew exactly how to survive, in the worst case scenario. No one could mess with him because he had all the figures and all the numbers so accurate. But my mum, that wasn't, bless her, that wasn't her strength at all. She was much more to do with personality, and she provided that fire, the Aries, that optimism. Even that's a more Sagittarius interpretation, but still, she provided that spark, that death before dishonor. The whole idea of fire, Aries, is the warrior. I will strike before I get struck. It's all about self-defense. It's the purest form, really, of Aries in a lot of ways. But sometimes the best form of defense is attack. And that's why fire is such a powerful energy when it comes to getting things done, or you sometimes have to get out of the way of it as well, because it can be very intense. So, I say that because they complemented each other, and that's where harmony comes in. That's the balance of the male and the female, the yin yang. That's the expression of divine harmony or service to the other. Someone's always going to have a propensity, personal bias. But in relationship, we mirror and sometimes reveal our shadow selves. And that's when intimacy, trust, and also respect can go deeper. And obviously this is where the skills of relationship become really important. Communication, forgiveness, trust, and all these various things is what creates greater strength and depth in relationship. And, obviously, if one wants to have children, then that's how it goes deeper, because then love creates something, a byproduct of that intimacy. Thank you.
You're okay.
Got coffee delivered to me and water. So, the point I'm trying to make here is that we're always going through themes at certain times, and we all have our own individuation or individuality connected to those themes. So, for example, when the South Node is in Libra, it would affect Libra people, sometime Libra more. Or if you have, let's say, a stellium in Libra, or you have more propensity of Libra, it could also affect air signs more. But there's so much more to discuss with that. That's why getting a chart reading is so important, because it's unique, it's individual to you. But what I'm trying to say here is that the theme of Scorpio has now changed, and we are now in the South Node Libra and the North Node Aries. So we're coming out of the dark, you could say. We're coming out of the survive, thrive. We're coming out of, the intensity of extreme, which was very clear, with the Ukraine war, which is still there. And now we're going to be moving into a different phase of everything. So I've mentioned this before, the Chinese New Year, which is the water rabbit, will really start revealing itself, which again is individual, it could say sovereignty, justice. And Aries, the North Node, means that as an individual, we are, really coming into our fire. It's no longer like the Taurus, the earth, the security needs, the aspect of money and things like that. It's more to do with what fire, what difference am I going to make? What spark of creativity or spark of reaction is going to come now. And a lot of these things are going to manifest more when we get to October. And that's what we need to understand now. We are in a massive retrograde phase. That's what's really, really important. We're in Leo season now. I mean, look how fast this year's going. We've come out of Cancer season and now we're in Leo season. Mercury's actually in Leo right now, and Mercury will be going retrograde next month. So that's another planet that will be going retrograde. So everything's on halt. Venus is in retrograde right now, and that's the big theme of this summer. It's the big theme of the next 3 months. And when we get to September, when we get to October, everything that is happening now will become much more realised or visceral or understood. But really the goal, the joy, the gold with Jupiter in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus, it is April next year. That's what this is all about. This is about getting our ducks in a row now. So when we get to April and into the summer of next year, we're very, very strong. We are profiting. We're dealing with all of the volatility that's happening right now. We're dealing with all the uncertainty. Because obviously when things shift, i.e. nodes shift, there's a little bit of time adjustment to understand what is actually going on. Especially because of all this retrograde motion. That's the thing. So when Venus goes retrograde in September and then comes out of its post-shadow period in October, and the eclipses happen in October, Pluto goes direct in October, that's when everything really starts shifting. So now the key, the wisdom, the secret really, is to get our ducks in a row and to use this Venus retrograde in a wise way to get into harmony, to get into balance, to understand ourselves. Because again, Leo, Venus in Leo, is a fire sign. So there's a lot of fire right now. There's more fire than there was just a month ago. Because the North Node is also in Aries, which is a fire sign. So this volatility, this kind of acceleration of things is going to become much more obvious, especially when we get to the autumn, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. So that's the secret, that's why you're listening to this information right now, If I'm making you feel comfortable or helping you, I'm giving you certain gifts or keys right now to work out what you need to do. And obviously with Venus retrograde, a lot of it has to do with relationship. But that's when we get into the house system now, the house systems, we need to work out where Venus is in your house system. So, for example, I was chatting to a friend who Venus was in his 12th house, and he's obviously, we've all got relationship stuff going on right now, whether it's positive or negative, whether it's going deeper or it's at the end, whether it's to do with work, whether it's to do with intimate other, there's just relationship stuff going on right now, and that's just how it is. Because, like I say, everything's in retrograde. Even Chiron now has gone retrograde. That actually happens. Is it the 23rd already? Wow, it was yesterday. So yeah, it's just crazy how fast time is going. And also, I've got to talk about the nodes square to Pluto as well. So there is just so much going on right now in terms of review, reflection, retrospect, reorganization. Reconsideration, re-establishing, so it could be boundaries, for example. And the danger is if we are not aware, conscious, we're not aware of ourselves. Like, for example, I'm a big fire sign, so I've got to be careful, because obviously if I don't manage that fire, I could, I've said it's not like my breath smells. But dragon breath, like it can be very fiery, Now, if you've got a propensity for fire, if you understand that, then you can manage it. Obviously, as a man, I've got testosterone, and how do I manage that? Well, exercise is very, very key, especially as I'm getting older, and health becomes more even important now. The more that I study this stuff, like 15 minutes of exercise every day, it's crucial, as well as releasing, let's say, Kundalini, things like that, meditation or yoga, all good examples of adjusting to this new element of fire. And obviously with the South Node in Libra, which is the collective, and remember, Libra is very balanced. Venus rules Libra. There is a just aspect here, and that's why whatever's going to happen, over these next 4 months, especially if there's crisis, because Pluto is squaring the nodes at the moment. So there is an emergence occurring right now. There is a shift. There is a propulsion that is also going on in terms of, what's coming next year, really, when Pluto goes back into Aquarius. So what's happening right now with this node shifting, and this is the key again to astrology, this is really working the rhythm, the harmony, adjusting to the shift and being a part of it, and relaxing, and how we can change the outcome of whatever happens is the sovereignty and the understanding of deliberate creation, and also recognizing that we are powerful. We have personal power. Not just that, some would say we are a star, a universe. Even Plato talks about that. So if we can recognize who we are and act in the way of sovereignty, or who we really are, our uniqueness, then absolutely as a collective at this time, this is the beauty of it, this is the joy of it, absolutely can change the outcomes of the planet. And if you study people like Greg Braden and various other people, who've talked about this, where they collectively meditate at the same time, for example, or I've always said to people, if everyone just lit a candle at the same time with an intention, and if that intention is coming from the heart, and if that understanding of awareness of your personal power is met with that elemental understanding, lighting a fire, or going into water, praying, letting go of the pain, moving through it, there is so much opportunity for trauma release, and to serve as a collective right now with this South Node in Libra. So the more of us, let's say every single one of us on this channel who's listening right now, if every single one of us, now we're coming out of this survive, thrive, into, you could say, action and justice, I haven't thought of the term exactly yet, but this individual sovereignty, which is going to become much more prolific, like, for example, if there is bail-ins that are coming, if there is going to be a crisis, blackouts, development of war, we just don't know how things are going to go. From what I've discovered recently, it is all about what's coming next April. So Jupiter conjunct Uranus. And how's that going to look? Because when you see the world right now with Uranus and Taurus, and I've done talks about this, however many, 6-7 years ago now. Obviously, Uranus and Taurus is a shift in the financial system. So he who controls the money controls everything, You've got the BRICS nations coming up now. You've got the American dollar and the karma, related to America with the Pluto return. You've also got artificial intelligence, but what's more prolific is AGI, which is, I think, artificial general intelligence, something like that, which will be coming when that Uranus conjuncts Taurus next year in April. So from the people that I study and who I learn from, they were talking about how ChatGPT 3 is like 110 IQ right now, if you get ChatGPT 3. ChatGPT 4 is 160 IQ. So it's like someone like Einstein, for example. So that's the level that we're at. But AGI, when we get to April next year, when ChatGPT 5 comes out, apparently it's more like 1,600 IQ. So that's what people like Elon Musk have talked about before, how scary AI is. And in this AGI, this self-learning aspect, is the fear and why ethics is such an important part of this. Pluto into Aquarius, but also Saturn as well, into Pisces. And of course, the 20-year great cycle of Jupiter conjunct Saturn with the winter solstice of 2020. So all of this is accelerating now. Web 3.0 is coming. And the more we accelerate and use AI, the more sophisticated we can become, healthier we can become. And that's super important. And there's just so much potential. But when AGI comes out, everything's just going to go bonkers, Like robotics, obviously, when that comes in, and how that works within itself will be freaky and terrifying for a lot of people. And obviously the fear is, the idea of warfare and how that could change as well. And it is changing. So there's a lot of fear potentially, but the whole purpose is, do we choose love or fear? Do we choose surrender rather than, let's say, arrogance, ego? And how do we obviously deal with that in relationship? So going back to what I was talking about, Venus now, Venus retrograde. Venus, where it is in your house system, is super important. So, for example, a friend of mine was just talking about his suffering, and I said to him, dude, you're not really going to work it out until September, October. So the key is for you, because in your 12th house, is just to surrender to the unknown and relax, because the 12th house is in the unknown. And it's also in the house of hidden enemies. So there could be a subversive element occurring, or a difficult to see element occurring with this Venus retrograde for him. So there's no point him attaching to anything right now. He's best just relaxing into the unknown and letting fate and letting the universe, synchronicity, play out, or remove the blockages within his own psyche, the traumas, so he can make a better decision, when he gets to October, and certainly when he gets to the spring next year as well, because that's when it will really count. Venus will have moved massively forward by that time, and obviously Pluto will be in Aquarius and various other things. So you need to look at your own house. Like, for example, obviously it's to do with relationships. If it's in your third house, let's say your left brain, logic, I think, is the third house, then whatever's happening right now immediately could be very immediate, because obviously if relationship dynamics are playing out, then straight away, it could be like enough is enough, things need to get worked out quick. And if one isn't in control, i.e. in honour, or if one isn't in sovereignty, you could say, or peace, then things could just escalate incredibly quickly. Likewise, if it's in the first house, you might get a real deep-rooted sense of I need to think about myself right now, this retrograde, and who am I, Likewise, if it's in the sixth house, the relationship dynamic could be playing out at work, or it could be playing out in health. Like, my God, I really need to fix this problem that I have right now immediately. Enough is enough. So obviously it's unique to you. That's why you need to have an understanding of your chart. And, obviously I'm here to read those charts. And assessing these things on a month-by-month basis as well is something I also do. So all of these tools are available. There's always someone there that can help. We're all part of this emergence. And collectively, we'll have to see. And I think we've got a bit of time because everything's in retrograde. It's not really the time to be moving super forward. Even Uranus goes retrograde next month. and Jupiter goes retrograde in September. So when we get to September, when Venus goes direct, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about right now will become very relevant. Like, for example, I had different glasses. and I went, it was my father-in-law's birthday last week, and we went to the river, and I put on some glasses. I put them in the glove compartment, and for some reason they got really hot. And it's like they blurred a little bit, and I couldn't seem to get them to see it. I don't know why that happened. So it's compelled me to wear some new glasses. And that's bizarre, isn't it? Because now it's like I've had a change of how I look. And that's a very Venus in retrograde thing. Like, there was a client that I spoke to recently, and I said, maybe it's time to try something new, you know? So these are the things that you can do with Venus in Leo retrograde. But yeah, it's tough right now because, you know, there is a lot of square aspects. Like, for example, Mercury, as it's racing through Leo, before it enters Virgo, which we'll talk about next week, but as it's blasting through, you know, it's going to square Uranus. So again, this is the experience of who am I, or my, let's say, sovereign self, because Leo has a sovereign aspect. I think Leo and Aquarius has a sovereign aspect. It's very sort of regal in a way, you know, both of them. So, you know, the ego of Leo, or the, you know, like the red carpet of Leo kind of thing, the VIP aspect of Leo, and look at me, I'm in the room kind of thing. So again, we've all got an ego, you know, we've all got a truth or something that we aspire to do. You know, if you didn't have any ego, it would be difficult to do anything, you know, so there's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, it's a healthy dose of it though. But this square again to Uranus and Taurus, this change in the world, how are we going to be sovereign at this time, you know? And some people, let's say, like what was happening in France, I mean, I've not been following that too much recently, is let's go kick some ass, you know? And, you know, the whole world is watching this stuff. And there's so much crazy stuff going on right now. And that's why someone might also think, right, I need to learn AI. I mean, I've been encouraging all my people and team to do it, because that's going to be the secret. That's what's going to really help. Because when AGI comes in, or, you know, ChatGPT 5 comes in next year, you know, we want to know about it. Just like it gives us an advantage, basically. And if we're here to make the difference, if we're here to show the light, show the way, or show our light, or do what is required on the planet to help serve, to bring light and authenticity, you know, we've got to use the tools. And that's what it is, it's a tool. We could be frightened of a tool. Like, you know, for example, if you had a gun, you could be frightened of it. Obviously, because it can kill someone. And, you know, obviously this is all a debate about guns, especially, you know, when that gets abused, and, you know, there's so much to it. Like, there's a whole military industrial complex related to it. And there's all this idea of self-defense, and this is mine, and whatever. And obviously war comes from that industrial military complex. But, you know, if you know how to use a gun, let's say, and you're responsible with it, you're not just going to suddenly have a gun and start shooting people. You know, you wouldn't do that. But obviously there are psychos about, and there are evil people who want to dominate, take over, and technology, with the new technology that is coming, is where the fear is again, and the ethical debate. However, if we're using AI, for example, and just what I'm going to say, people are scared of that too. If we're using it, good people are using it, then that learns what is good. You see, that's the beauty of it. It needs to respond and react to what is good. So if people go minimalist and check out and say, I don't need this, then it will only serve those that work with it. You know, that's the point. So we don't have to use it, but if you don't use it at all, or just ignore it, or be Luddite and check out from it all, then you might not only be doing yourself a disservice, because it might really serve you and help you. Like my brother was talking about doing presentations the other week, and I said, just go on ChatGPT and, you know, just see what it can do for you. You know, learn about it on YouTube and see if it can help you with the presentation, because he'd be really surprised. Like, a lot of people think it's cheating, you see. It's like, all right, can this all happen for me, you know? And you think you're cheating, you know? But no, it's just there. It's a tool, and those that use the tool are the ones who get ahead, you know? But if you use the tool and you don't like it, and you don't want to use it anymore, then just don't use it anymore, you know? But if you don't have awareness of what's going on, then sadly, that's ignorance, and it's not going to serve. Ignorance is not sovereignty. Knowledge and experience is. So if we're going to be sovereign, if we're going to be our authentic self, then there's kind of no choice really, but to kind of at least have an awareness of these things and know how it can serve. And if it makes your life easier, why is that a bad thing? Because again, it needs to be of service. There's AI as well. The only fear is that, let's say only the people in power, or the people who are evil, or the people who want to control the world. And again, there's a very small percentage of those people, you see. This is the thing. It's not like, it's like Spectre, from James Bond, or, that kind of like Dr. Evil, right? There are people like that. But again, what I've been trying to say to everyone, and this is why you've got to be trusting in your personal power and know that we are the power, the people are the power, we are the difference. It's us that makes the difference in the universe, not just the planet, by being, again, and in Islam they talk about jihad, and again that word gets very misused and misunderstood. All that word is to do with work out yourself, find peace within yourself, basically. So if we're going into fear, we're going into hate, we're going into anger, and again, relationships, the best way for that to happen. How do you find peace? How do you find trust? How do you find curiosity and awareness? How can you listen and not react? And again, I'll say it again, this John Graham, is it? Beyond Mars and Venus. It's a very amazing book to have come out for people at this time, because there is a misbalance between the masculine and feminine, and it's easy to go into the ego again and to go into reaction, rather be an observer mind, rather be in trust and see the love of that person, and be able to balance yourself. That's where that idea of jihad comes in. Not going into war like, right, okay, AI is coming to get us, we need to blow it up, or we need to do something to destroy it, or whatever. The devil is coming, these kind of fears, which again, religion can really tap into. And, it's fascinating. I saw a documentary recently, and, religions are going to have a very, very hard time with AI. It's going to be something very, very concerning for people in dogma, that is. Not people who are in observer, who are open, who understand the nature of the universe and all that is. But people who are stuck in Dharma, in samsara, in the world of Dharma, then how can they break out of that restriction that, there was something that came before the word? It's going to be very, very difficult for people to at least contemplate that and not go into reaction, not go into fear again, How are they going to overcome that fear and surrender to that all of this might be an illusion, none of this is real, yet there is some sense to all of this to make me feel better, to make me feel hopeful or whatever. The biggest one is, let's say, if aliens come down, and where is that going to be in the religions? Why wasn't that in the religions? It's the same like with astrology, when people can't predict things, like you can't predict World War III, for example. Why? One of the greatest questions is, why did the astrologers not predict World War II? Why did they not do it? Because if they're that good at astrology, why couldn't they get that right? So, there is a lot of contention, fear and ignorance, and humans have personal biases, is what I said at the start of this. Humans have a propensity for something. So you can easily overlook something, and that's what creates inaccuracies. It's what Ptolemy talks about. It's the human that gets it wrong, not necessarily the order of things, as Plato would say also. The order of things, the symphony of the universe, is perfect according to those Western philosophies. However, how we interpret it and how we understand it is the experience, is the folly, is the suffering, as the Buddhists would say also. So what do we do? How do we navigate this time? Well, for me, it's always going to be simple. You can laugh at things, When things get too intense, you can laugh at things, yeah? You could also take time out and just relax and get into the day-by-day rhythm of the breath, of just being able to breathe. if you're feeling stressed and anxious, you know, and frustrated and in fear and angry, you know, how can we relax and sleep? Because it's so important to sleep. It is one of the most fundamental things that you can do to stay healthy, is to sleep. So we need to be able to sleep. We need to get our breath in a sensible, relaxed way. We need to look at the world with a certain degree of humour. And that's not being flippant or crass or, you know, checking out. But it's just seeing it for what it is. You know, it's an illusion, it's samsara. It's not necessarily how it is. And I tell you what, these days for me, you know, I remember a lot of people in the Western mind are so fixed in narratives. That's sadly, it makes them quite sheep-like. It makes them quite easily controlled, you know, and that's the reality. When they can only understand that seeing is believing, they are easily tricked. You know, they are easily losing the infinite nature of themselves and the opportunity in the space in between, which has infinite potential. That's why absolutely believing is seeing. Absolutely. And I swear, with AI now coming, it will become so much more obvious that. Because again, if you are fixed in the world of form and you are deceived into the scarcity, which again, the trick, the matrix, if you want to call it that, or the things that make us not believe in this personal power and potential of the infinite, they are never going to be able to break the constraints of form, you know, of the Newtonian physics, of, oh, you're never going to have enough, so this is your lot in life. Like the class system, you are a working class person and that's your lot in life, you know. Now the thing is, you could easily just fly somewhere now, or however, and go somewhere and not be in that matrix, you know, not be in that class system. Not everyone has that opportunity, to be fair. So that's when you've got to come into acceptance and love yourself and be yourself, and you become meek, you know, become the person who inherits the earth anyway, without the stress and difficulty of the ego and the arrogance of that this is mine, the horrible entitlement. I mean, that the entitlement that I see on the planet right now, especially living in America, is just staggering to me. You know, it's, you know, not everyone, but a lot of people in the Western world, you know, have access to credit and things like that, who haven't gone out and served, i.e. helped old people. I'm not saying these people are bad, but my gosh, the level of entitlement is kind of disgraceful, really. You know, it certainly doesn't work for me, that. And there's nothing wrong with having it good and having it easy and living in a place, let's say, of so-called freedom and so-called access to money and abundance, and that's a blessed thing, and that's something we should all aspire to and keep that happening. We don't want to live in none of that. We want to have that. But when people become entitled and self-obsessed and can't find gratitude and spoil, and you see so much evidence of alcoholism and depression because of it, it's staggering. And that's why a lot of immigrants, when they come to places, you know, they don't have that perspective because they've come maybe from a war-torn place, or they've come somewhere that's not as good, like communist place. A lot of people who've come from, let's say, a communist place and come to America certainly don't suffer that as much. You know, they're like, this is amazing. You know, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to go for it here. How lucky are we right now? But sadly, this level of entitlement and greed and apathy and waste and poverty consciousness that comes with it, the expectation on people, and it's sad. It's a very sad thing, you know. But anyway, you know, we've got to forgive. We've got to find trust, and there's a reason for everything. You know, there's always these traumas that we're clearing, and we could always find gratitude. We could always help someone. You know, you could always just go out there and help someone. You know, and you could just do a kind thing. You know, even if it's not reciprocated back, you get nothing for it. You know, it can make you feel good. I mean, this Burning Man, I'm really interested to go in a lot of ways. I'm sure it'd be awesome. I'm sure that's very entitled, but at the same time, I love the idea of the creativity and all that kind of stuff. And I love the idea of giving, you know, this gift sort of thing, even if it's just for a short period of time. You know, when I went to VCon, I loved that. You know, I love all that. You know, it's like just speak to the person next to you. You know, get over yourself, get over your limitations, get over your, this is mine, this is mine, my precious, like nobody can have it, that kind of bullshit. And I'm going to run out of everything. I'm going to have nothing. And I've got to protect it. I mean, you see it sadly with so many people, especially, certain older generations. I need to have this about, it's that Scrooge mentality, and yet they could give so much right now, And at the worst case, you see it with the elites, like, it's like, this is ours, we deserve it all, the plebs, the serfs, the peasants. And yet all the people, sadly, the majority, there's so much more of us, have become so apathetic, disempowered. And in some ways, you don't have to react, but you have to be sovereign. You have to put light on these things. Even if you don't feel you can do anything, you can do something little. At least talk about it, rather than sit in silence and go, "This is our lot." We're a sheep. We're a serf. We're a slave. It's a poor show, to be honest. There's nothing cool about it. There's certainly nothing respectful about it to the next generation. I mean, how is the next generation going to respect that? It's just a way to create more resentment, and the divide and conquer aspect then, which is sadly, which there's a lot of this about, a nefarious scheme, you could say. The young people are going, I hate the older people, they've fucked us, And then you see the older people going, this is mine, I deserve it, I'm entitled. And, I see it in America more than I do in Europe. Not saying there's anything wrong with enjoying the spoils of life, if you've worked hard for it, that's an honourable thing. It's just that this lack of sharing, this lack of awareness of the next generation, and also the entitlement for the younger generation as well. It's shocking too. So there's a lot of problems, and again, you look at the East emerging, and it's like it's our time, and then when stress comes or crisis potentially comes, then how are people going to get together and work it out? That's our job. That's why we're working on ourselves. That's why we're going into peace rather than war. That's why we're going into the heart rather than the ego. That's why we're going into love rather than hate. And this Venus retrograde is going to be super interesting because obviously with the South Node in Libra now, it's your environment. Where are you in the world right now? Who is your neighbour? Obviously, intimate other is the big one. And family is the big one too. So all of these factors that are playing out right now are going to become so much more exaggerated when we get to September, October. And, if you haven't worked these things out now, it's going to get, I hate to say it, a lot worse in October. So you have to be ready. We've learned from the North Node, South Node, we've learned about the survive and thrive. The worst place you could possibly be is when you can't eat, when you have no money, when you're in a war-torn area, worst case scenario. How can you get out of that? How can you make sure you've got enough money? How can you plan accordingly? So that was what that theme was about. And now it's going to be much more to do with your environment, i.e. air, balance. So how do we balance ourselves? How do we harmonise with our community? Pluto and Aquarius is not just technology, it's also going to be about community. So how do we work with our environment, our community? How do we add? So go knock on your neighbour's door. Go find where that old person is and try help. Go to a school voluntary and help out. Go to a community organisation and do some voluntary work. Find out about refugees. Give some clothes, that you don't need anymore before the equinox. There's so many beautiful things we can do on this planet. And all of that good vibration will become so much more obvious when AGI comes out. It will almost feel, even though again that Data, the guy called Data, in the Star Trek Generation thing, he was always trying to discover emotions. That robot, he could do everything. I mean, we're not that far off, believe it or not. Having that kind of sentient or artificial being, in our reality, it's really not that far away. But he didn't know about emotions. He could only compute it. He couldn't feel it, and that's the difference. That's what makes us human. So the more human we become, the more we can give. The more that we can love, the more that we can surrender our ego. So again, this is where the trauma work comes in. Get rid of the bullshit. The denial, the defensiveness. The things that create hate, create war, create separation. This internal jihad, if you want to call it from the Islamic perspective, and how do we turn the other cheek, let's say in the Christ perspective? How do we find forgiveness, self-forgiveness? And the Ho'oponopono is one of the best techniques I ever used when I was learning this stuff. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. I love myself, I love myself. Just repeat that. I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. I forgive myself, I forgive myself. Just keep repeating it if you're in a negative state of mind. What was the other one? I thank you. Thank you. Just keep repeating it. If you're in a state of fear, you're in a state of hate, you're in a state of can't do anything, the world is against me, all that kind of stuff, just take 10 minutes and do the Ho'oponopono. If you can't sleep, 10 minutes, do the Ho'oponopono, and you will get to sleep. And that's the key. You'll feel better. And then when you feel better, you can make rational decisions. You could have a better relationship. And yes, sadly, some relationships are dysfunctional and will end. Some work relationships are untenable and have to end. That's what I mean. AGI, AI will really bring that to the fore over these next 2 or 3 years. When robotics and AI really integrates, and a lot of people who think they're safe, won't be. Doctors, for example, who might seemingly have high-powered positions right now, might all be redundant. Not all, but a lot. Teachers, there's so much coming, with AI, AGI, and robotics, that we have to be prepared. So again, if you're in the heart, if you're acting in your authenticity, if you're relaxed, you can find why you are here. And Tareck Adeeb is going to really help with that. The community will come, and the healing will come, and the services that we offer will come. Same with accessible astrology. These things are here to help, and the community that will grow from this, and hopefully we'll all get to meet and we'll all get to hang out. My mentorship, for example, will be there too. All of these things will happen, and the vibration, the collective consciousness, the co-creation of this Aquarius age will add so much light, so much positivity, so much excitement. For me, so much travel, because I love that because I'm a Sagittarius, right? And so much hope, optimism. Isn't it incredible? What's it called again? There's something that I just learned about recently. I don't even know the term, it's that new, but it's kind of like, I could say, the deep fake, and this is what all the Hollywood people are striking about. And hopefully I'll be doing a podcast pretty soon about the Hollywood industry, and when my podcast comes out, it's going to be awesome. Path to Peace is the podcast name. And the reason why these Hollywood actors, and again, this is the fascinating thing about these, let's say, idols or false idols or people that everybody, aspire to. And, there's a club that goes on with this, right? You can't get to these places like the BBC, for example, if you don't fit in within the structure. But again, the internet and all these various methods, have come along and derailed most of these organisations, for good or bad, even if it's all being documented. Still, this is justice, this is Aquarius, there is a just element to Aquarius, if it's not the other side, authoritarian. And that's why we're here. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to be our authentic self, recognise the real, if you want to say that, be balanced, be in harmony, trust, and act with our sovereignty and integrity. And we will make the difference. Because there'll always be 5% of the chosen ones, you could say. The 5% which are the enlightened ones. No one can ever mess with them. And that's beyond class, beyond race, beyond gender. It's about consciousness. It's about knowing who you are, acting in the way, and no one can fuck with that. That's the bottom line. Doesn't matter if you're a king, queen, president, whatever. And if you're acting in the flow of your authenticity and love and harmony and trust, then Gaia, the Mother Earth, will guide you to where you need to go to. You just can't be attached at this time. So it's like, right, I need to leave this country, I need to leave this place. You've got to work out how to do it. And that's where these plan Bs come in. That's where community comes in. That's where the internet comes in. So you've got to be ready. There's much more crazy times to come. 2025, Neptune, Saturn going into Aries, 2026. Uranus into Gemini. There's lots to play out in these next 3 years. It's one of the most intense, changing moments ever, that we'll ever experience. It's the Yuga cycles going up out of, the Maya into enlightenment. This is what's happening. This is the Mayan prophecy as well. It's happening. And we could be a part of it, We could enjoy the ride. We could surf it. We could also participate, add the seed, is what Rudyard would say, into this collective consciousness, which will grow over the next 1,000 years, thousands of years, 26,000 years. We are the Renaissance. You know, we are the Michelangelos, Leonardo da Vinci's of this time. We are, you know, and again, humility is important. We need to remember that we're the Taoist mentality. I love the Eastern mentality. You know, we are everything and nothing at the same time. You know, the Tao is all that is, and yet nothing, because it's part of an ocean of consciousness. So we've always got to be humble. We've always got to surrender to the infinite, to the unknown. And if we can do that, we can cultivate that, we can really enjoy the thrill of the unknown and allow synchronicity to manifest, and our dreams become realised. Like I said, you know, that Hollywood thing, you could make a movie now, a Hollywood movie, just from AI. I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, if you've got the right ideas and you ask the right questions. So for me, I've always wanted to make a movie, you see. And I remember talking about it to friends like maybe 15 years ago. And I said, I'm going to make a movie, you know. And I want an Oscar. You know, it was just my attachment to a certain idea that was validating. And then my mate said, it'll never happen. And I went, you know, I really believe it. And now, it could happen without a Hollywood actor, without budget. I mean, it's terrifying for the Hollywood industry, right? It's the same thing that happened with music. You know, streaming came along and decimated the music industry. You know, from, let's say, the Michael Jacksons, the Queens, EMI, Polygon, these huge institutions, bizarre amount of profit, just got annihilated, you know, by Napster. And obviously now the big contention is the streaming. The artists are not getting paid, you know, and that's what has to change. And I think NFTs and all of that will be brilliant for the music industry. Same thing probably, you know, with movies. But for them right now, terrifying, you know, when they're getting paid hundreds of thousands, they've got $1 million houses in California, whatever, New York, whatever, and suddenly they're all out of work because of this deep fake. And I can't remember what it's called now. I'll find that out. But there's something that's a new term. I only heard about it recently, and that's what all these Hollywood strikes are about. They're up in arms about it because they're not needed anymore. AI can do it all. It's remarkable. So if you are in the state of dreaming, believing, seeing, you have imagination. Imagination is absolutely the key at this time. And what you think, what you believe. So if you want peace on earth, it can happen. Relax, let go of the outcome, be sovereign, be grateful, one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, one breath at a time. And if you are in trust, and you can do the jihad, whatever, you know, get rid of the negative and go into peace and keep working with it, you know, just go into positive thoughts, then you can manifest your dreams at this time. You know, people will fly to space, and it will happen, you know. It's astonishing what's about to happen. We want to be on the right side of this. There is no doubt about it. You know, crisis is coming. A Bretton Woods system is coming. There is going to be a shift in the financial system. You can make a lot of money that way. You know, get on these EFTs, you know, the new systems. Don't put all your money into it. You know, don't put all your money into crypto, for example, just a little bit. But it could actually make you a lot of money. You could also lose a lot of money too. So we've worked with the survive or thrive. Now we're into justice and action. You know, that's what's coming now. We're into truth and honesty. And if you're going to be a sheep, if you're going to be an actress, which, you know, or actor, which is very much Libra, if you're going to be fake, if you're going to be conned by deep fake, you know, you're not going to understand the AI. You're going to be conned by the crisis, yeah, potentially. Then you will go into that samsara, you will go into that dysfunction, you will go into that potential dystopian reality. However, if you have the will, which is also a big theme of this next 18 months now, fire, and you light the fire, like Pallas Athena is a great example of that idea of fire, you know, of light, of truth, of strategy. And you have that over these next 18 months. You can trailblaze, you know, you can really move with Pluto going into Aquarius next year, with Jupiter conjunct Uranus next year, into great profit, great opportunity, and great times which you can then serve and help the planet. So that's what Tareck Adeeb is all about. That's what this community, as we grow, will all be about. And remember, this Venus retrograde, you need to know where it's in your house, and you really need to allow this potential time to reorganize, reassess, recognize what it is that you're here to do and what it is that you are to be. Take action, North Node in Aries now. So get rid of your trauma, work out your relationship, whatever it may be. And then as we approach the eclipses in October, things will accelerate. Things will really, really accelerate. Okay, that's all I've got to say. Just relax and thanks for listening. And again, patience is a virtue. We'll get there eventually. You know, we'll have the website and all these things up and running. It will happen, and soon we'll be talking. With that, thanks a lot and take care.